Astra travelers, and welcome to another episode of Tales of Teyvat, a Genshin Lore Podcast. Last week, we went underground and got sad all over again while we discussed the Sun Children of Enkanomiya.
In better news, we're taking a journey with the Flame-Mane Dehya, our sweet and feisty leader.
If I should stay, I would only be in your way. So I'll go straight to our website, that's talesofteyvat.com, where you can find pages dedicated to each of our episodes with visuals and explanations by Tiff. Speaking of, take it away, Tiff.
Our site also includes links to our past seasons and special episodes, artist spotlights from the community for every episode, and wallpapers to download.
Finally, feel free to email us at talesoftevatpod@gmail.com to let us know what you think of this week's episode and what topics you'd like to see in the future. Additionally, feel free to give us a rating on any podcast listening platforms you may be using. It helps us show other travelers that there's some fun lore stuff going on and makes us know if you like what we're doing or not. That being said, today we're taking a very long journey into the Sumeru Desert where we're going to talk about Dehya. But before we talk about Dehya, I think it's really important that we just set the grounds for what exactly an Eremite is. Because there's a few different definitions of Eremite thrown around depending on who you talk to in the game. And it's a little confusing, and it's definitely a big part of Dehya's life.
I think the simplest way to sum them up is that they are mercenaries from the desert, but it gets a little deeper than that.
They don't have a plane, correct?
No
Yes.
planes.
Not Emirates.
Not first class.
No snakes. No planes.
I actually think they might be leftovers from the remnants of Gorobod.
Ooh.
Oh, so like ex-Gorobodians?
Yeah, like the descendants of them.
That would make sense. You have to be from the desert to be an Eremite.
Yeah.
As we learned from Lillipar.
And like the people that were left over from the city-states of the desert, they all kind of like fizzled away. So it makes sense that there would be like descendants sort of left roaming the desert. We know that some of them still worship Deshret. And there's also a video from one of the developers that talks about how they are settlers from an ancient civilization in the desert.
Oh shit, really?
Yeah.
Was that like in the announcement video or a different developer video?
It was from a Sumeru preview teaser.
Ooh, very interesting. I know Dehya says any mercenary in Sumeru can call themselves a member of the Eremites. Sadly, you get some mercs throwing the term around to take advantage of outlanders who don't know any better. So it seems like it's pretty easy for anyone to pretend to be an Eremite, which is also interesting.
But there's also an official Eremite brigade that was hired by Sumeru City as their city guard, the Corps of 30.
And what makes them so special? Why were they chosen? Do we know?
So their name comes from the 30 original members who were hired by the Academia Sages. And they were just sort of like the oldest Eremite brigade who have just been around forever. They're actually technically responsible for managing all the other brigades, but they have strained relationships with a lot of them because they work for Sumeru City. And there's a lot of Deshret followers in the Eremite groups that don't like that.
If only they knew the truth about how shitty a person Deshret was.
Wow.
Was he always shitty, or did he just become shitty?
I've never met the man personally, so I'm not 100% sure, but I'm going to say he was born that way. Maybe it's Maybelline. Maybe it's Deshret.
Maybe he was just trying to create a bad taste for a pep when she flicked her hair back and sucked him down. Oh, that sounded bad.
That sounded real bad.
When she put on her lipstick and ate that chicken nugget.
It was delicious.
Can we also take a pause for a moment? I just want to say thank you to Emerald from Resonance for letting us know that a pep is a girl dragon.
Yeah, I think we misgendered her a few times.
A few?
But shame on us, because I looked back at some of the quest dialogue, and Nahida is always calling a pep it So shame on us
Mhm.
for just assuming that equated to, he, him.
But I also feel like we're usually pretty good with that stuff. So it makes me wonder if something changed.
Maybe, I don't know.
It's possible. I think also it goes to the fact that a dragon is a dragon and they are gender fluid sometimes.
That's true.
So it just depends.
All I could hear in my head when Emerald messaged and said she, when we were talking about a pep, shout out to Emerald. We were talking about a pep and Emerald said she. And all I could hear was Donkey from Shrek in my head going, "Oh, you're a girl dragon."
Got them giant eyelashes.
That's so thank you, Emerald. Thank God this is not an episode about a pep. It changes nothing about my feelings toward a pep. A pep still has a contract for my soul.
Oh, really?
You guys gave it to her.
She gonna eat you.
You guys are the ones who had this contract signed. So don't tell me you've been joshing me this whole time.
No, I stand behind it.
I did not sign anything in blood.
Even if you turn into goop, I'm still gonna feed you to Pep.
That's
Oh my
true.
God.
A goop.
Listen, a pep won't eat goop unless it's forbidden knowledge goop. So
Who says you're not forbidden knowledge?
Mix them in there with you.
I might be forbidden knowledge since I'm not from Teyvat. I am a descender.
Ooh.
Ooh. Anyway, back to the Eremites. So the Eremites, mercenary groups in Sumeru, who I also think are often misunderstood. There's a very clear prejudice toward people who are from the desert in Sumeru.
Yeah.
They're always seen as more aggressive, like almost dirty, evil people, like which isn't true.
Just because they're in all the sand doesn't mean that they're dirty.
Well, I mean, a lot of Dia's peeps are dirty, and that's why she takes such good care of herself.
That is
She's
true.
like, I don't want to be filthy like y'all. She's like, can y'all bathe, please?
Yeah.
Like they're cutting their toenails in front of her.
I think it's like because they're hired arms, really. If you like hired a hitman, or maybe not as
All right,
as
Jersey.
underground as that. Yeah. Maybe not as mafia as that, but they're really hired for protection for, it's like if you went get a bodyguard, a security guard, you need somebody to do your dirty work. That's what an Eremite does. So I think some of them, it goes to their head, like when they're like doing well or like getting lots of money and stuff like that. And some of them go off into a life of crime because they're like, wait, this is kind of easy. I can do this instead.
Meanwhile, Dia's like, y'all made a lot of money. Go shower. Go buy a shower. Buy shampoo.
Yeah.
Like, spend the money right.
Can't be driving in gold with a crusty ass butthole.
Most importantly, they're painted as like being very like rowdy and rough. And I think Dia is sort of presented as like, this lady of the Eremites, which they're not really used to. So there's a little bit of like gender stuff happening with that whole dynamic, but which I'm not crazy about. But I also think that, they're kind of like the pirates of the desert.
Yeah.
Not pirates again.
But since you kind of brought up the whole like gender thing, not on the fact that she likes to be clean, but she spends a lot of her money on like jewelry and cosmetics. And even that's like a part of her burst and things like that, or one of her idols and whatnot. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you feel that they kind of pushed the whole she's got to be a pretty thing? Like, and when I say they, not the Eremites, but like the game, like the story and stuff like that, that it went a little
Right.
too much on her? Or are you kind of like, yeah, you need to show that you could be a crazy like person, like, a very strong person and still be a feminine person?
Like I'm a little torn. Like part of me loves that she's a girly girl, but I feel like they push that a little to make it a contrast with the other Eremites.
And make it a contrast with Candace, too.
To a certain degree, but I think a lot of it isn't just the fact that, mostly men are in this specific field. I think it's to do with kind of how socially lions interact with each other, if that makes sense. So Dia is referenced as a lion, and especially the Flame-Mane. And so when you think of lions and you think of Asiatic to, Central African lions, you have lionesses, gorgeous, beautiful, always doing the heavy lifting of a pride. versus male lions who are kind of just, goofy off.
Come in and eat the children.
Exactly. Like, I mean, they're powerful and they can be very strong, and you see them, fighting for territory, fighting for dominance, but they're not kind of doing the do, if you know what I mean. They're not.
Yeah, very matriarchal in a way.
Yes. And I think that's kind of what, yes, she's over effeminate, but I think that's to one kind of show that, yes, you can be very feminine and very powerful. We see that with almost all characters in Genshin, especially like Ningguang, super powerful, gorgeous as fuck.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about on the look side of things. I mean more so of the outwardly, like, I'm going to stop this fighting and put on lipstick. Like, they put it in as a part of her character. She uses half her money on jewelry and cosmetics, and it's kind of like, all right.
I think that's also like the juxtaposition of she's the only female in like this particular mercenary group, and they're all gross. And she is powerful enough and strong enough to be able to stop a fight mid-thing to just reapply lipstick.
She's also sort of like a leader among all these dirty men. So I think they really tried to contrast her with that idea of like, these smelly men sort of working under her and appreciating her. And she's like, I can outdo all of y'all, but I'm still going to look good doing it. So part of me loves it, but I feel like they pushed it a little bit more than they needed to.
I feel like they pushed it, but so at first I was like really like frustrated by it. But then there was a scene in her story where we go to Caravan Ribbit and we're talking with these three guys, and the one guy finds out that prior to him starting and being a part of the Blazing Beasts, which is a smaller group within the Eremites, because they're sanctioned off, they had an event where they were trying to convince women to join the Blazing Beasts. And Dehya is like, I tried to get women to join, and y'all all were bumbling fools about it, and none of them stayed because you all were awkward weirdos. And the two guys who were there for it are kind of like, oh, yeah. And the third guy's like, what? You never told me this happened. I missed my opportunity to meet women. And they literally like chase each other around while we're talking to her.
And Dehya's like, me too. I lost my opportunity to meet women as well.
What I really liked about that scene, though, it made me realize that Dehya is one of the guys. Well, it's noted that Dehya is gorgeous and that she does put all this time into her looks. These guys don't drop their mouths at her and they're not able to speak.
They're not goo goo gaga.
It was a really interesting way of saying, like, you can care about your appearance and still be the baddest bitch in town and still be one of the guys and be a little bit of everything.
Yeah, but to be fair, the Blazing Beasts were her father's mercenary family, quote unquote father.
No, they weren't.
Huh?
The Blazing Beasts aren't. That is the group that her father pushed her into to get her out of his group.
Oh, really?
Deacon Ahamar.
Yeah. That was the group that he was the leader of.
That she wanted to make sure, that she left.
Oh.
And she joined the Blazing Beasts instead.
I mean, they all still look at her as a big leader.
Wait, how old was she when she joined the Blazing Beasts?
Pretty young. They don't give an age.
Okay.
She was old enough to know that she didn't want to be as part of her dad's.
Yeah, like she didn't know that her dad pushed her in the Blazing Beasts. She thought they approached her because they had heard about her. We'll talk about her past and what she knew and didn't know shortly. But I don't know. For me, at first I was frustrated by the whole, like, why are they making her so girly girl? But then I also like the juxtaposition with Candace, where she's like, Candace, you have to like treat yourself and like dress cute. Come on, you're cute. And Candace is like, no, I can't do it. Ugh, I have work. So they're also like the opposite in that way.
No, I can't. Meanwhile, like, look at Candace.
I know, right? But Candace's whole thing is like, I can't work in these jewels.
You're not trying hard enough, Candace. Come on.
I think it was cool that, we have two women from the desert and they are opposites. But at the same time, they're still both badass bitches who could kick my ass, all of our asses at once, any day.
Speak for yourself. No.
Okay, Brendan.
Damn. I would gladly be beaten up by both Candace and Dehya.
Same, honestly.
But that being said, now that we have a good look at what exactly an Eremite is, what the situation in the desert is as a whole, I think we can talk a little bit about how we first meet Dehya, which is in the Archon line.
Hit the sleigh button.
So we first meet Dehya when she is with Dunyarzad. And Dunyarzad is a very rich woman from a well-off family. And Dehya, we find out, has been hired on to be a bodyguard for her. Dehya is with her because Dunyarzad has a really bad case of Elazar and really can't be out on her own. And for a while was actually bedridden from the Elazar.
Yeah, so Dehya is the Kevin Costner and Dunyarzad is the Whitney Houston.
And in case you don't know the reference, that's from The Bodyguard.
I was about to ask.
Yeah, now the opening makes sense.
It's a movie.
So then, somehow or another, we end up finding ourselves trapped in the Sumeru's Fest.
Yeah, Junior's art is actually trying to revive the Sumeru's festival. Sumeru's? That, I can't say it. I've never been able to say it. Sumeru's, whatever.
This festival is actually a celebration of Lesser Lord Kusayla and her life, and celebrates her birthday. And you find out that Dunyarzad actually really loves Lesser Lord Kusayla. She is a dedicated follower to her, unlike many people in Sumeru. And we find out this is because as a kid, she was, they thought, dying of Elazar. She had a really bad batch of it where she was stuck in bed. And she had dreams with Lesser Lord Kusayla talking to her, telling her that she had to get through and whatnot. So she felt like she had been blessed by Kusayla, and that is what helped her get through that bad batch of Elazar and led her to surviving. So she really wants to have this festival and wants to celebrate her. And thanks to Dunyarzad and Dehya, we're actually able to find out that we're in some fucking timey-wimey bullshit time warp again. Ugh. It's the first time, actually, that we're in a timey-wimey bullshit situation.
It's the start, the predecessor.
The introduction of the dream crisis where we're just constantly in dreamland somehow.
And the way that this works is we end up constantly re-meeting Dunyarzad and Dehya in Sumeru City. And we're able to prove to them each time that we chatted with them before. And the main piece of evidence that we're really able to say that gets Dehya and Dunyarzad on our side is we're like, well, we know that Dehya sold her claymore to make money to help pay for this festival. And Dehya is like, how the fuck did you know that? And Dunyarzad is like, oh my god, that's so sweet.
It's like, wifey sacrificed for me?
Yeah, it's really cute, though, that Dehya was actually doing that, too, though. It's like she's not just her employer or somebody that she works with, which is normally the way that she would look at any of her gigs. It's just a part-time type of thing, and we're only friends because we need to be right now. But, with her, they really are friends. She knows how much this means to her that she sold her claymore and then anonymously donated the Mora is just so sweet. And then we had to go and ruin the whole anonymity of it and go tell them.
Listen, we had to get out of Nilu's head. I was about to burst.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in my arch enemy's head for way too long. But that being said, eventually we break out of the dreams of Nilu, thank the Archons. But because of that, we've realized that Nahida, who is the Dendro Archon, is locked away in a cage, basically. And we're able to somehow, and I don't exactly remember how, convince Alhaitham to help us out. We go out to the desert where we meet with Candace, we get attacked by Sino, and eventually we also get Dehya involved because of Candace. Dehya goes with us back to Paradise Dehya, where we are to get information from Tighnari. While there, Tighnari gets struck by lightning by the Balladeer, and we fight the Totore, that bastard. I hate him. And Dehya is there when Tighnari gets struck by lightning. I'm going to keep saying Tighnari struck by lightning because we all know how much that scene has a chokehold on my heart. And then Dehya is like, oh my god, Tighnari was struck by lightning. She was standing right next to him. How she also didn't get struck, I don't know. But she didn't. And then we run back to the desert to report back. And she helps us free Nahida. I think those are the important bits for the Archon quest.
Yeah, I'd say so. At least for her part.
Afterwards, too, just so everyone knows, Alhaitham, who we know becomes the acting grandmaster of the Sumeru Academia, he does actually ask Dehya to join the academia, and she's like, nah, man, that's not for me. And, Dehya is very much about the fact that she needs to like live a free life. And Alhaitham thinks it's a total waste of her skills that she's just an Eremite, quote unquote, just an Eremite. But he gets it, and he respects her wanting to have this like specific path for herself. And Dehya in turn is like, yeah, he asked me to join, and I was like, nah, man, I got my own things to do. But he's the perfect type of guy to work in the academia. It's like, is that an
The
insult?
shade.
Yeah, I was like,
He's a little bitch. So
She's like, I would never, but he's perfect for it.
She's like, I like to change it up. He likes routine. He can stay there. Which, total non-DS question real quick. Do we know if Alhaitham is still currently the acting sage?
I thought he resigned.
He did
didn't
resign, right? Like, didn't he
Yeah.
say that in his story quest? Like, he had officially, like, backed out?
Yeah,
Mhm.
but do we know who took over for him? I don't think we do.
I don't think that we've really gone back into the academia since,
That's true.
it hasn't been a central part of the story.
Wait, did Sino take over? I don't remember.
No, Sino just goes back to being the General Mahamatra.
Oh, okay.
Because he had dipped out of that prior to the Archon starting, and he goes back to it. He's like, cool, I could be this again. Although he does take quite the long sabbatical in between, with all those events he was in.
He had to go walk to Mondstadt.
Yeah, I know. I can't believe they walked to Mondstadt when there were perfectly good waypoints.
Yeah, nobody knows about the waypoints but us.
Can people use those waypoints besides us?
They do not know that they're there, which is one of the reasons why we had to take the little Lillipar-looking lamp over to Bottle Land with Clee.
Well, Catherine knows they're there.
Well, yeah, but like nobody else uses them or even like discusses them because they talk about in the whole like last summer's event with Clee and the Bottle Land and things like that. They make a big deal about the fact that Alice made some like magical way for us to scoot on over a place just by like talking to a bottle. So yeah, it goes a little bit more into some details and stuff that lead us to know that nobody else can really take the waypoints.
I would love to know what the normal average day person living in Mondstadt City thinks about the fucking waypoint right in the middle of town square. It floats, it bounces, it sparkles, it glows. Like, are there no curiosities?
I think they just think it's a part of the like statue for the Archon. It's like an extension.
That's what I was gonna say. They think it's a tribute.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. Like, you have the people of Mondstadt who have left Mondstadt, like Albedo. And I know Albedo's a bad example because he knows more, I think, than he's letting on. But Albedo went to Inazuma, where they also were. Albedo's been to Liyue, where they also were. Like, Sino and Tighnari came to Mondstadt.
Maybe they can't even see them.
Yeah, a lot of them have traveled all over the place, but I think that they also all have statues of their Archons. So why would they think it's any different from another nation?
Because that's not like Sino and Tighnari wouldn't look at that and go, oh, look, a Dendro Archon statue is here in Mondstadt.
Yeah, but they would know that there's an Animos Archon statue there.
Maybe it's like a McDonald's, like it's just worldwide.
Stop
Yeah.
it.
Recognize
No,
it anywhere you
I
go.
don't want the Waypoint to be a fast food chain. It doesn't even. Oh, wait.
Too
So is
bad.
it KFC?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
god, no!
It's the KFC Express. The actual Archon statues are the full-blown KFC. It's like Chili's and Chili's too.
I'm not fully on board for this, but we'll come back to it one day. Anyway, so that's a little bit about how we first meet Dehya and what her life is about. But Dehya actually has quite the complex history and life story. So Dehya, and I'm going to tell you what Dehya knows. Dehya knows that she was raised by a father who was the head of one of the mercenary groups. And she basically thinks that he's a shithead and that she never wanted anything from him and that he was a womanizer. That's all Dehya knows. And she went off to live her own path, joined the Blazing Beasts, and left Dakon al-Akmar to go do her own thing. And she feels that she has paved her own way. But we learn in Dehya's storyline that her family history is a lot more interesting than that, actually. And we find out that her quote-unquote father is actually her adopted father, Kusayla. And that Kusayla one day found Dehya as a baby in the sand and said something along the lines of, if the wind had blown just one more time, you would have been completely buried. And he could not just leave this baby there. So he brought the baby back to Dakan al-Akmar, which was his Eremite group. And everyone looked at him like, where did this baby come from? And he felt if he told the group that he rescued the baby, he would look like too much of a softie for them since he was their leader. So he basically said that he knocked up a random woman and the woman came by and like gave the baby to him. He was like, shit, I guess I got to be a father now.
Orphan alert.
Yes, yes.
She is an orphan.
So he finds her, adopts her, brings her in. She gets raised as part of Dakan al-Hakmar, which is a subsidiary of Deshret's Relics. Deshret's Relics is one of the largest groups within the Eremites, and they're pretty terrible people. They're very manipulative. They use blackmail to encourage themselves to do whatever they want. So anytime someone joins any of the ranks of Deshret's Relics, you have to get a written record of who you are, and they store it away in a room. That way, if like Brandon ever decides to leave, they could go find Brandon's record, and they could bring it to Sumeru City and say, here's all the shitty things Brandon has done. Arrest him.
Is that a threat?
Yes.
It sounds like one. Damn.
It is. See, listen, this is what happens when you get a contract for my soul. I threaten you.
You had it coming.
No. So she joins this group, but we find out that Dehya actually does not have any sort of record within Deshret's Relics since she was just found and she was raised within them. So they never really reported her to the big bosses, so to speak. One day, her father starts to realize that Deshret's Relics is not going well, that this is a really bad situation, and he approaches the Blazing Beasts, a different group of Eremites, and suggests that they come and approach Dehya and ask to adopt Dehya, basically. In the meantime, prior to this happening, Kusayla also ran into a group from Sumeru that was being attacked by Eremites. Ironic, because he's an Eremite himself. He noticed that this group was a family and that they had a little girl that was about Dehya's age at the time. And he decides to go in and help them. And he defeats the Eremites attacking them. And when the family is like, hey, like, why did you do that? He goes, oh, well, I did attack my own just now, but I have a daughter the same age and it just enticed me to help. We find out that this family that was attacked is the Homiani family, which is Dunyarzad's parents. And we find out that the little girl was Dunyarzad, but Dunyarzad does not remember this at all. Only her parents do. Flash forward to Dehya joining the Blazing Beasts. She's out on her own. She's becoming this great mercenary, very feared. People love her. And her father is still kind of worried. He doesn't want this mercenary life for Dehya. He's playing puppet master in the background with her life.
Yeah, very
almost.
much.
And she had no idea that any of it was happening. So he approaches Mr. Homiani and suggests that he hire a bodyguard for Dunyarzad. And he's like, yeah, she's bedridden right now with Elazar. She's not going anywhere that requires a bodyguard. And he's like, well, you never know. She's going to get better, right? She'll need a bodyguard then, right? And he's very pushy about it. And Mr. Homiani does end up approaching Dehya and asking her to be a bodyguard for Dunyarzad.
Both the dads are like, these two girls, they sure like softball. They seem to have a lot in common. Maybe they should hang out.
Sure it's not football? Bend it like Beckham, y'all.
No. I actually don't ship these two anymore after doing the story quest. I'm not going to lie. I definitely lost.
Really?
Ooh, really?
Yeah, I definitely see them more as sisters now.
Ew. Surprise incest.
Well, yeah. Well, Mr. Homiani says at one point even that he really started to see Dehya as more like a daughter to him over the years of her working for them. And we find out that really Dehya's dad was trying to get Mr. Homiani to bring her on as a full-time bodyguard and get her out of the mercenary lifestyle. And Mr. Homiani caught on to that pretty quick and was okay with that. And that's why he's always offering Dehya to stay with them longer. He offers her a lot of money, even though she has these high rates, yada, yada, yada. So she's off doing that, her jazz. In the meantime, her father is not doing well. Kusayla is constantly being berated and beaten by Deshret's relics because his group of people is not paying their dues on time and whatnot. But he's taking the brunt of all of that. And one day, even though he has a cane, he decides that he's gonna go and he's gonna like tell Deshret's relics basically to fuck off.
But I think what's also important though there is the reason why they haven't been paying their dues is mainly because he's like trying to protect them as well. He's kind of making sure that his own are kind of like taken care of first before that. And he's also getting beaten up because the records are inconclusive. Like he's not giving them all records. And it's mainly because he's hiding Dehya's as well. Like he doesn't want them to know about her because he doesn't want her to exist in that world.
Right. And it's also, I think, a good point too, is that him and Dehya at this point too have had a huge blowout. So they no longer talk. And the other men in Dakan El Hamar will tell Dehya later on that he grayed overnight from the fight and that he became a shell of himself after that.
Aww.
So he goes to Deshret's relics with his cane and he hobbles in, and some of the people in Deshret's relics are like, we didn't think anything about him. He literally like could barely walk. And he somehow showed himself to the record room and he burned it. And he just burned all of the records in there. So Deshret's relics officially had no records of anyone. And people within Deshret's relics, such as the men of Dakan El Hamar, could be free.
Ha! Get fucked, Deshret relics.
This is the part that was a little confusing to me. I couldn't tell if he was killed or he allowed himself to die in that fire.
You know, it does seem as if like, well, he just die in the fire and whatnot. But later on, his comrades are basically saying like they want revenge because they believe that he was killed. They killed him because he burned the record room.
But they also have no proof of that, right?
So yeah, no, they don't know. They assume. So yeah, he could have burnt up in there. I think they're assuming since they beat him up all the time that he probably got like a really, really bad beating from it.
Because his cane was found in the record room when we go there many years later, of course.
His wooden cane in the burnt room survived.
Although it was buried a bit.
It was standing up.
No, it was suggested that Traveler dug it out. The Traveler was like digging around.
I still, even if it was like buried under it, and what is highly flammable, there should have been at least something to the sign of like it's charred, it's damaged.
It's a little sootish.
Yes.
Like they showed like that it's dirty.
I love that you don't know for sure if he did it on purpose or he was murdered or it was accidental, like, because that really puts you in the perspective of Dehya.
Yeah. I actually was waiting for him to still be alive.
So was I.
I was waiting to be like, oh shit, you found my cane. Thanks. I left that shit before. Get back.
Also thought that was going to happen. It was a little sad when it did.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say, for me, I'm more on team he did it to himself and that he allowed himself to perish in the fire because of his fight with Dehya. I just think that he kind of was like, my whole life, I have not been the hero I wanted to be. And the one thing I wanted to do was protect Dehya. And I don't need her to know that I protected her and that I did these things. And me and her don't talk anymore. And that's kind of like your kid at that point is like your life's work. And like at this point, his life's work is not going to even recognize the fact that he did something, right? They are not talking. So I almost saw it as I have nothing else to live for once I have released my friends and my people from this trouble.
It was really sweet because at the end of the day, he really did have like a selfless love for her.
Yeah, for sure.
He literally found her in the sand and kept her. Like he was a merc. Like he did not need to do that.
One of the cool parts too is when the cane is found and she picks it up and she's kind of like, wait a second, this looks familiar. And it opens and it's a toy sword because when she was a kid growing up amongst all these dangerous men, her father would tell stories and make all the mercenaries all like be parts of the play. And he always repeated this one story about this lioness. And one of the things like she got as like a toy was always props from these little plays, one of them being this sword. So she gets to then keep that afterwards because, she's realizing that he's actually a pretty great guy. But it's neat that his cane, he had that embedded in there because he was still that much of a softie.
Also, that like whole cutscene where like they show the guys that are like standing right in front of her back in the day when she was a kid playing swords with her had me like so emotional.
They looked like they were gonna cry too.
Oh my god, they didn't. That's probably why anytime someone else cries, I'm like,
yeah, I was like, oh my god, these guys, they're just like, yes, he loved you, we loved you, we all loved you.
So we find out all of this information during Dehya's story quest. And basically in her story quest, we run into her and Dunyarzad doing their thing, hanging out. Shopping, as we all do.
They're in the Grand Bazaar.
And Dunyarzad is like, Dehya, you don't seem right. What's going on? And we're like, yeah, what's going on? And so she eventually admits to us that she heard that her dad's group, Dakan al-Ahmar, is just going around mercilessly killing people and very like bloody, heinous things that they're doing. And she's got a little bit of concern because even though she says she doesn't like her dad, she still has a little bit of love for him in the back of her heart, and she wants to figure out what's going on. So Dunyarzad is like, yeah, you got to figure that out. I didn't know you didn't talk to your dad. Like, yeah, go do that. And Dunyarzad at one point also brings up, she's like, well, what does your mother think? And Dehya's like, I never knew my mom. And Dunyarzad's like, oh shit, I didn't know that. I'm sorry. She's like, it's okay. I would have mentioned it if it bothered me too much.
Dunyarzad just being the most supportive girlfriend.
Or friend. But yes, very supportive person in Dehya's life.
Girlfriend, right.
Right.
Lover.
Gal pal.
Lesbian lover.
So she says that she wants to go check out what's going on with this tribe. We agree to go help her. We go to Caravan Ribbit with her. And this is where we meet 3 guys in her group that I just thought were so hilarious, who were fighting over the women. They cracked me up so much. And the main guy in that group's name is Harun. And he tells us that he thinks that the group is having an internal power struggle, but he doesn't know why. And they give us some information about where we could ambush a possible small group of members from Dakan al-Hakmar. And when we go over there, there were so many ridiculous things happening at this point. We defeat the group, we go up to this guy and we're like, give us your information. And he tries to bite his own tongue off to keep himself from giving us the information. And he passes out from the pain.
Yeah, like this
So
is his
insane.
idea. He doesn't take his knife, he doesn't do anything. He's like, I'm gonna bite this shit off.
His name is Satar. And remember that because we do re-meet Satar later on.
They named him after a fucking sword.
Yeah. Also, Dehya feels terrible about it. And it's such a good inkling into her character because she was like hardcore threatening the guy that she's a lot of bark, which is good. She knows that bark can get people to do things, that she doesn't necessarily have to bite to get the answers that she wants.
Right. She's like trying to speak their language in a way of like, well, threats work, so let's try that. But she doesn't actually want violence.
Right. Which is amazing considering she's a hired mercenary. It's very unusual. So we have no one to talk to at this little group that we've ambushed. So we go through their things and we see some transactions and things that make us feel like Dunyarzad's dad might be involved. So we go and we tell Dunyarzad and she's like, I was always curious why my father didn't hire a member of the Core 30 and hired a Blazing Beast member instead. I always thought that was a little weird. So Dunyarzad goes and gets her dad. Before she goes and gets her dad, we are talking to her at what I assume is her house, which, by the way, she's Al-Haytham's neighbor, if that's the case, which had a lot of questions about how much the scribe of the academia is making. If he can live next to Richie Rich Dunyarzad.
It's the neighborhood.
That's honestly, maybe that's it. I have questions about it still. Anyway, we do end up meeting up with Dunyarzad's dad. And that's when he tells us the story about the family trip and how they were attacked and about how Kusayla saved them. And he gives us all this insider information about Kusayla convincing him to hire Dehya and all of these things. He said that he hadn't heard from him recently, though, although he had gotten a request for supplies. He refused to send him weapons, but did send him food and medicine supplies and recommended someone else that we could reach out to who might have some more information and he's actually a member of the Core 30 named Jawad. And Jawad is actually a member of the Core 30, and he is illegally giving weapons to members of the Eremites. So we talk to him, we convince him to give us more information. We go out to what he says is the last spot he saw Dakan El-Hamar. From there, we are eventually able to find some other people from the group, and they tell us that Kusayla is dead. And we find out that Dehya had no idea that he was dead, and she is pretty heartbroken about it.
Yeah, she's surprised by it. She's surprised that it was actually quite a few years ago, too. Like, it wasn't like yesterday.
Right.
Which I do find it interesting that information never found its way back to her, considering she is still connected to the Eremites as a whole.
Yeah.
Like, how did she find out that they were killing recklessly, but not that her dad died?
Well, do you think the Eremites were protecting her from that?
Possibly.
I don't know. What hurts more in that situation?
It could have, I mean, it's not like the people that, like, from his group that was, like, coming over and being like, hey, guess what we're doing? So it just may not have been also too much of a public knowledge, because the good guys might not all know the names of all the bad guys. And she didn't want to hear about her dad. So probably if anybody said anything to her, she'd be like, I don't want to hear about that guy. He doesn't exist.
And they're like, you don't know how right you are.
Yeah.
But the fact that she finds out years after.
But yeah, she finds out that Kusayla is dead, and they tell her what he did. And they're like, your father sacrificed himself for the cause, basically. Like, he knew he was going to die one way or another. However, we think he might have actually died. And we're out getting revenge, and we're killing anyone related to Deshret's relics, because fuck them. And Dehya's like, I can get behind this murder. I'm joining you. And we're like, yeah, us too. And that really struck me for a moment, because Traveler knew that they were going to probably end up murdering people. And Traveler was like, sign me up. And so was Paimon. They're bloodlusting over there, those two. I just think it shows you that, like, turning point we've seen with Traveler ever since Scaramouche, being much more willing to do not so great things as opposed to originally.
Yeah, I mean, things just got a lot darker, beginning with Sumeru.
Yeah.
There's so much death in Sumeru.
And Fontaine, I mean, that Fontaine's the first time we meet a serial killer.
Yeah, that's like it just keeps getting darker. But like,
Yeah.
I felt like Sumeru was like the first time where we were like, whoa, like everyone's dying and all these story quests.
I feel like Sumeru is also not just like we have dark storylines with murder and death and like manipulation and torture, but we also have the finality and unresolved relationship arcs where it's not such a happy ending that we've seen kind of in Mondstadt and Liyue and partially part of Inazuma, where like, the war is over. We're a united nation again. Oh, like the catastrophe of the dragon's over. We can go back to like partying and getting drunk and like with the same with Liyue. But Sumeru, we have horrible consequences, and not just like for the overarching Archon line, because we have the fact that the Fatui have so many chess pieces here. We also have people like Dehya and like Kaveh who have unresolved issues that honestly can never be resolved.
Sumeru feels like such a nexus for like the regions of this game, mostly to me because we know that Irminsul is somewhere around there. So it always feels like it's going to come back to Sumeru at some point, like unlike all the other nations, you know?
Right? Like, I think it has to come back to Sumeru.
Yeah, I just feel like it's the most important region in a way.
And it's also so centralized. Like it's not completely landlocked, but you can get to Liyue, Fontaine, Natlan, and probably Inazuma from Port Ormos. The only places you can't like directly get to are like Shishnia, Mondstadt.
That we know of. I mean,
That we know of.
there are ports in those areas, so I would assume we could get there.
Yeah. It's really a hot spot in kind of like the central nation of Teyvat. I mean, you can get to anywhere through Sumeru, and it's everyone goes to Sumeru, 1 for education and 2 for trade. I know we want to all be like, we're going to go back to Mondstadt, and I think a final battle in Mondstadt is probably going to be a thing, but it definitely seems like Sumeru is going to be like head base for resistance against Celestia.
Ooh. That would be fun.
I don't know, man. At the end of Ito's event, I also got a little
Mhm.
glance at some people
Yeah.
who might be leading the road to the fight against Celestia.
They just might be in Sumeru.
Also, Sumeru has the door to Conria. So if nothing else, it could be like an entry into Conria. So
Mhm.
It's so funny because you're like, they have a entrance to Conria, and I'm like, well, Mondstadt and Fontaine have the dead bodies of ancient dragons. I'm like, what is that gonna end up doing one day? Does someone figure out how to fuck to revive those dragons? Alinus and Durin.
well, so does Inazuma,
Oh my god, well that's a snake.
but it's it's considered a dragon.
Oh really? Urabashi's considered a dragon? I didn't know that.
We'll get into it.
Oh god, no. I gotta tell you, we've talked so much about Urabashi this season. Fucking snake that's everywhere.
Oh, he's also a god. He's not like one of the actual dragons.
Also true. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of giant dead monsters everywhere, and I'm real scared for them being brought back to life one day.
That would be so awesome, though. I would love that.
It would feel like Godzilla. What is that movie where it's like Godzilla versus the moth versus...
Wait, all the corpses, these dragon corpses, they're all like from gold, right? Or no, we don't know about Urabashi,
the other two.
but they're all from the realm of humanity, not like a dragon, right?
We know that Durin was made by gold. We know
Mhm.
that Alinus was
Also made by gold.
physically made by gold, but we don't know where his like subconscious originates. Well, we know it's from the abyss
From the abyss, yeah. And Urabashi's just a god.
that lived in Teyvat and eventually ran away.
But we know that Urabashi is from the realm of humanity,
Right.
not like the lighter elemental realm, like a dragon. I guess we don't know for sure. Maybe Alinus and Durin are considered from the abyss realm. I don't know.
Well, it makes me curious too if Durin is another conscious that Gold found. You know, like we know that she made him. Same for Albedo.
Yeah.
Like, is Albedo really like a subconscious that she found and put a body into?
Oh god, that means she could have taken dragon subconscious and just plopped it in anything.
I mean, any subconscious she finds, she could drop into whatever she wants because that's exactly what she did with Alinus. She said, ooh, look at this boy I found. His little mind bubble floating around in the abyss. I'm going to give you a body. And I've decided you're going to be a dragon.
I wonder what other consciousnesses are just floating in the abyss besides mine.
I'm convinced that she made Skirk at this point.
Ooh.
Or like her and Skirk are like sisters. I don't know. Anyway, back to Dehya. That's basically the story quest. We go and we fight Deshret's relics at their headquarters. It's a domain. There's this really funny moment where like we see all of Kusayla's people like running across a bridge, and it really made me giggle because I just giggle at these things. The head leader of Deshret Relics ends up jumping to his death because that he thinks that is the more righteous way to go. He doesn't want to see the official fall of his group. And yeah, we get everyone to turn themselves into prison. We run into Satar again while shopping and doing some retail therapy with Dunyarzad, who needs a rug for her family. And while there, Jawad finds us and he's like, hey, yeah, I'm about to hand myself into the authorities as well because I did bad things. But in the meantime, here's this box that your father's group found, and there's some of his old things, and I want you to have them. And while most of it is quite literally junk, there is a letter from her father in it, and it's really sad.
Yes, it's actually where she finds out that he's not really her dad. And he writes this letter and he says in the letter, like basically that he's really drunk and shouldn't be. It's like when you like send an email and you're like, oh shit, I shouldn't have sent this email. It's one of those.
I was so shook because you think that it's going to just be like moving and like fatherly. And it's like, oh no, there's more like upsetting news.
Yeah. And it's like such a casual like drop too. He's like, since we're not blood and I found you in the sand, and you're like, what? Excuse me? And I think Dunyarzad says it because, of course, Dehya is reading this emotional letter out loud to us. She's like, so he wasn't your real father?
And then she was like, I'll be your daddy.
No,
Oh my God.
Stop it. No. And that's basically the end of her storyline. So Dehya is a very diverse character. And at the end, she goes, well, I guess now I have to figure out who my real parents are. And she sets that as a goal, basically. And we told her that we'll help her when needed. So who do you think Dia's real parents are? Do we think they're someone of importance?
Actually, maybe.
Who do you think they are?
So when looking at the etymology of her name Dia, the way it's spelled, can be translated to leader of soldiers. I would think that she might come from some more famous Eremites.
Well, so you think she came with like a note that said her name though? Because like he just found her in the desert. I assume that he named her.
I don't know. I just feel like there'd be something more to that.
I just feel like whoever her parents are, they are some interesting people because I'm convinced that she has cat ears.
What? I thought it was confirmed hair.
Oh, she just styles it that way.
Is
yeah,
it?
It's confirmed hair. She just styles it that way.
She's been styling it that way since she was a kid?
Uh-huh.
Why?
Because she wants to be a lioness.
But she didn't even really like that nickname when they gave it to her.
She grew into it.
Well, I think she was kind of fine with it because even though it was a story from her dad and she hated her dad at the time, she still really liked that story. So she kind of was like, all right, I guess that's fine.
Well, I was going to say, I thought she came from an adventurer cat group. So that's out. But I do think her parents were probably adventurers, and I do think that they're probably dead.
I think her parents are Candace and Dunyarzad. That's mommy and daddy.
I think her family was definitely from Sumeru. Like they're definitely, I'm going to assume Eremites, but they're definitely the desert folk as they're always said to be. But I'm going to assume that like they were either robbed or they were robbing somebody else. They didn't know what to do with their kid. And, you know, she just kind of got left all on the side kind of a thing. But I definitely think that she's got some kind of foundation. It'd be cool if she was like Jet's sister.
Maybe she's a descendant of one of the kings of the Gurabad region.
Or like one of the city-states.
Yeah. I mean, one of them had 99 kids.
True.
Do you think she could be a descendant of Lilipar?
I would love that.
That'd be kind of cool. I wouldn't say they have the same attitude, but they have a similar vibe of we don't take shit.
Yeah, that's true.
I also do like the idea. I go back and forth of like, because she's a playable character, like she's got to have an amazing backstory. And like her parents are some people famous, but it could just be, you know, maybe some villagers from Aru village were like, we have to give up our kid and we gotta, you know, put the baby in the wild or see if the Eremites might claim her as their own and kind of just as a self-made woman.
Yeah, I don't know if I believe her family is important. I definitely think that the parents are dead. That's all I know.
Most importantly, someone's dead.
Well, it just like would make sense why there was a random like crying baby in the middle of the desert. But there's a part of me that feels like maybe she's actually has some Natlan blood in her too.
Maybe she's Kaya's sister.
Well, then she'd have some crazy family situation going on. She'd be Conrian. I don't know if I think she's Conrian.
know.
Who knows? Maybe she was found in the sand right outside the door to Conria.
Shut up. He found her over in Pariland. Like,
Damn.
Yeah, I guess maybe I lean toward the desert itself so much because of, and there's controversy around it of her skin tone. But while she wasn't as dark as she should be, she's definitely not as white as some of the other folks.
Nilu.
Which seems to be something that they do, that does carry through.
yeah, because everyone that we've met that's from the desert does have what they call, what Hoyo calls their darker skin tone.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk a little bit more about Dia and her personality and who she is. She has some interesting views on life, such as her love for shopping, but mostly for cosmetics, her love of beauty. She has a pretty like active social life. She doesn't follow a god, which I think is very curious.
I want her and Kuching to have like a shopping montage.
Well, that would be nice, but I don't think we're gonna get that.
But how cute would that be?
I do think it would be very cute. We actually talked about it a little bit last week, which is 2 weeks ago, how Kuching and Dia would get along well and shop together. You know, but can we talk about the fact that she doesn't follow a god?
Is that uncommon for the people in the desert? Because aren't like some of them still believe in Deshret and stuff, but they don't usually follow Kusayla.
Right. But they do usually follow Deshret. It seems like a majority of them follow
I
Deshret.
wasn't sure if that was just Aru village. So that's beyond that, just that little group.
I believe so.
Because I know about Aru Village just because of the significance of that village, and they're thought to be direct descendants and the whole stuff with Candace and things like that. And I don't know why, if I just thought that they they were like leftovers.
They definitely make it seem like it's a widespread thing among the Eremites. That
Okay.
they're all like heralding the return of Deshret, and that puts them at odds with Sumeru City. So
Okay.
When we're walking around Sumeru City during the Archon quest with Al-Haytham, we do run into quite a few Eremites that are like, yeah, Deshret for the win. And we're like, all right. But also, we do have the one whole giant subgroup of Deshret's relics in the Eremites, and they're huge followers of Deshret. And although Deshret's relics has crumbled, those people are still scattered everywhere. Some of them have turned themselves in, some of them are still on their own. So I would think that a good majority, if the one big bad group likes Deshret, I'd imagine that there are other groups that follow Deshret.
Do you think that they know that Apep ate him?
Probably not.
Mm-mm.
I feel like we only know that because of the one fungi that talked to us.
Yeah, during the Apep storyline.
We know so much in this game because we're friends with the Archons and can talk to weird inanimate, like weird objects and like weird creatures. Like we've talked with slimes even, I feel.
Mhm. Yeah.
We know we have Whoppy over there, the Whopper flower.
No, not Whoppy.
But, while she does believe in the gods. She does not follow them, but she does have a good respect for Kusayla, aka Nahida. She feels like Nahida was too kind to the people of the academia. And in her own words, she said that Nahida should have broken every single bone in their bodies. But instead, they got a nice little vacation to the rainforest. But of course, they're dealing with Tighnari, so who knows what Tighnari is doing to them. Also, she has no formal education. She did not go to the academia, and schools weren't really a thing in the desert. And as we know from the Archon line, they are really just starting to get books and things out to the people of Aru Village, who are then dispersing them to other people of the desert. And we found out through Dia's storyline, too, her dad had a written book of stories, and we found out that it was actually illegal from the academia to own your own books.
Well, I think it's really interesting that she sort of, everyone wants her to join the academia, but she, does not want to. But she actually is very like pro education. Like she actually seeks education for herself, and more importantly, she wants education for all the Eremites to sort of take them to the next level.
Such like a person who's like, I don't need to have this, but I want everyone else to have it. Like if I don't get it, that's fine, as long as these people are able to get it. She's very like a social justice warrior.
Yeah, she cares a lot about improving the lives of the people of the desert.
Yeah, much like Candace.
Yes, her other girlfriend.
Who should also be darker.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that Candace and Dia are pretty good friends, or girlfriends, however you want to say. And Candace actually says she may look like trouble at first, but the truth is she's really quite adorable when talking about Dia.
And that's not all. Did you see the birthday mail that Candace?
Yeah.
Ooh, wait, what does it say?
So Candace's birthday mail says that Dia came to Aru Village with a chest of, goodies like clothes, accessories, face powder. And, she was basically saying like a change would do you good. So she also brought the blazing beasts to patrol the village for Candace to like give her a day off. And then when Candace was like, no, I can't let you do this, Dia reminded her that she lost their last pillow fight. So she has to obey her.
Shut up.
That
Not
is
the pillow
having
fight.
pillow fights.
amazing.
Feathers flying everywhere. Oh my goodness. Oh.
I've never seen a pillow in this game.
What?
I feel like I've never seen a pillow.
There are pillows.
There are pillows. There are pillows.
They're on
Pillows
the
that you would
sofas.
fight with.
A pillow is a pillow. You can use it however.
Do you think their pillows are filled
You
with
could
feathers?
slap the bra right
Probably.
off of someone.
Or
Ah,
straw.
no, I hate it. I can't. Not the pillow fight.
I'm gonna go
I-
look to see in that little house they put us up in the city during the never-ending birthday festival to see if it has a pillow on that bed.
I'm gonna Photoshop the pillow out. TBT to when Tiff tried to Photoshop a text message from me, and I said the joke was on her because there were no typos.
I did nothing of the sort. I would never falsify text messages.
Tiff would never falsify my hatred of Nilu by trying to change it into love.
Never. That's so unlike me.
I love that.
Hey, you know what? I paid a lot for that degree that I have. I need to use it on something good. Who knew all along it was just this way I can fake Beans' love of Nilu.
But so while I don't have a love of Nilu, I do have a love for Tighnari. And I do just want to say that Tighnari...
I'm not sure if we knew that.
I will...
This is new information.
Really? Wait.
Yeah, I don't think
Really?
anybody has ever heard that. You should probably tell us that more.
So Tighnari, he has some voice lines about Dehya, and he's basically like, she is so capable and so reliable, but I also know that she will never come work for me as a forest ranger, and I'm not even going to waste my breath because I know she doesn't want it.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, because meanwhile, Alhaitham's like, I respect her decision, but I'm going to ask her anyway. Where Tighnari's like, I respect her decision, I'm not even going to ask her because it's going to waste both of our times.
Yeah.
Dehya was also supposed to take Tighnari once into the desert, but that trip was canceled because she goes something along the lines of he doesn't do well in heat, ? So yeah, more than one person knows that Tighnari can't handle the heat. So I wonder if Sino went on that journey instead for him, because that's what boyfriends do. But Tighnari's big thing is that he feels really upset that he's never been able to properly thank Dehya for helping him during that fight at Paradise Dehya. And from my understanding, she also helped him get first aid right away. And that's not surprising, seeing how she treats Sitar with his bitten tongue, which we do run into Sitar again during that storyline, and he comes over like this because he can't talk because he bit his tongue.
The fact that they were like, we got to make sure he can't talk.
We got to bring him back and unable to do his thing. But he feels really bad about it, and he wants to be able to help. And Dehya says that like things happen so quickly that she wants to like check in with him too. So I'm hoping we get to see the two of them together sometime soon. And, generally speaking, I found it interesting. There aren't a lot of voice lines about Dehya. Nilu is grateful for her help, but just seems overarchingly overwhelmed by the entire art conquest. And she wants to buy her a gift, but she doesn't know what to get her. I'm like, Nilu, stop. Dory uses her services and thinks that she's a great merc.
Yes, Dory hires her to escort her caravans because her price is reasonable, which is surprising because we know that her price as a bodyguard is expensive and that she has like a long line of clients waiting to hire her for that, which is just proof that she's in love with Dunyarzad.
I did just want to talk quickly, too, about how Dehya got her vision. Dehya isn't sure when she got the vision. So there's that.
Is this like an Ito, like, I went to bed and then I woke up and I had a vision under my ass?
She said that one day she just was like, oh shit, when did that get there?
Wait, is her vision on her hip?
Her vision is on her hip, yeah.
It was during the pillow fight.
Yeah, it's hanging off her belt.
But she notes two things about the vision is that first off, she thought about selling it originally. She was like, this could get me a hefty coin at the market, but she didn't. And she says that while she feels the vision helps her in battle, she doesn't find it to be the reason that she succeeds in battle, which I think can be said about all of our vision holders. I think it's a really great defining factor of people who get visions. They're not people who wouldn't succeed without their vision, but they're people who deserve the power, if that makes sense. Like, it's an interesting way to look at it.
I love that she, is not someone of a privileged background. So she was like, instantly, she gets this vision. She's like, wait, I don't understand why the gods gave me this and wouldn't just give me Mora instead. Like, why did they give me this trinket and not like something that's useful to me?
Yeah.
Because she was already sort of relying on her own, wits and skills to like do what needs to be done. So she was like, what I need is money. So hello up there, Celestia. Can you send some coin down? Thanks.
It's such an interesting juxtaposition when you look at her versus someone like Jean or Diluc too, where you have Jean who basically was like, all Gunhilders, like her mother's like, all Gunhilders get vision, so figure it out. You're meant to have a vision. And Diluc is like, my father never got a vision and he wants me to be what he wanted his life to be, so therefore I need a vision. So you had these two people who I love both of them, and I think that they both respect the vision and they're not full of themselves people who are snooty about the fact that they have a vision. But you have these two people who were like, oh my god, I need a vision, versus someone like Dehya who's like, why? Give me
Right.
something I actually need.
Another reason she and Kuching would get along.
Yeah, at least she didn't try to run over her vision or throw it off the Jade Chamber.
Mhm.
Also, there's a quote in her story about the vision in her character stories, and it says, the things she would experience thereafter would serve as further proof that even divine power has limitations. For all their might and wisdom, even a god might be constrained. Which feels like it's like an allegory for Nahida, but makes me wonder
Yeah.
if there's something more.
Maybe. I just took it as, yeah, like she knows that Nahida was prisoned and was like under the thumb of humans.
What do you guys hope to see from Dehya?
More badassery.
Well, I can't wait for the throuple wedding with her and Candace and Dunyarzad.
I hope that there is more toward her story, and maybe, you know, they did leave that kind of open, like she's going to look for her parents, and maybe that'll become a certain fit, like an important part of a story. You know, would be interesting if she was Conrian because of that whole big fight. But I don't know, I feel like she is going to end up being one of our characters that kind of gets left behind, unfortunately.
Oh, that's sad.
I think there was a lot to do with her when she first came out, and then there was, like I said, the controversy over not only of her skin color, but also her actual like fighting abilities and stuff.
Yeah, her
Yeah.
kit was
Yeah.
like highly questioned.
So I almost feel like they're going to be like, you know, let's just leave that alone. Let's just keep going. But it would be neat. I really do. I want to see more story or event or something like that not only happens in Sumeru, but happens in the desert. Because I feel like we've talked about it a lot. I think one of the reasons we've talked about it a lot is because it's not out there in regular story and stuff like that. It's all buried in the sand. So
I know.
Oh my god. Did anyone buy Tiff shorts yet?
Not yet, but that needs to happen.
Booty shorts and the crop top coming soon. In the hat.
Oh no, not the hat.
I would love to see, I think Dia's so dynamic. I would love to see her travel to other regions more. Like I want to see her in Mondstadt and Inazuma and Liyue, you know,
I'd love to see a quest line with her, Candace, and Sino.
and Dunyarzad.
No, I would be too worried about her.
She's not sick anymore.
Yeah, but she's like healing still. She doesn't have fighting powers yet.
Excuse me?
She purposely stayed behind during the story quest because she knew she'd be just like extra weak.
She was healed by the power of Dia's love.
Oh,
So she's fine now.
God. I will say, when I was doing Dia's story quest, I had Sino and Tighnari in my party because I thought I might have to fight the like illusion triangle things, and they usually Electro's good against them. And I felt real bad that I was like the General Mahamatra sneaking around with like the mercenaries. Like I felt like no one should have been trusting me. And then I also had like the lead forest ranger with me. I was like, oh man, these are all like people you don't want to deal with.
I love how immersed you get.
I do. I know. It's so bad. So terrible. On that note, though, I do think it's time for us to check our mail from Kirara. Today we do have a few messages. So our first message comes from Kirk, and they said, as you know, the new Perrin Harry book in Fontaine drops a ton of lore about Conria. But one specific passage for me solidifies one of the oldest but unconfirmed theories in Genshin, that the Teyvat sky is the false sky because it's upside down, and Conria is actually right side up with the true sky above them. The passage reads, due to the kingdom's unique position, things from outside this world were always leaking into it. And I think this really helps solidify that Conria's unique position is that the sky above them is the true sky that leads into the stars and other worlds. For me, alongside the other evidence suggesting the upside down theory, such as the inverted statue in Mondstadt, upside down buildings in the Kari Bear quest, etc., I really think the theory has legitimate grounds to be completely true. But I could also be totally wrong, and nothing's upside down, and the unique position is that Conria is deep underground and bordering the abyss, which is the source of the things leaking in from the outside world, possibly. Or maybe the abyss is actually space? Who knows? I'd love to hear your opinions.
I've heard this theory and I actually really enjoy it. Someone made an actual graphic of the upside down theory, and it made a lot of sense, honestly.
It did. I've seen that same graph and it's amazing. I think that the upside down theory makes a lot of sense because you have so much weird upside down stuff happening overall. The fact that we have the same moon at all times, the fact that the chasm has the upside down city, you had the upside down statue, and in Fontaine, there were a lot of situations with the Melazines where you were being like transferred into a different room, and you in Sumeru, it happened a lot where you go through like the abyss portals almost, and you'd be on the ceiling of the room you were just in, but you'd be right side up.
Oh, yeah.
So it definitely makes me feel that there's some weird gravitron type of thing happening here.
Teyvat's just on the gravitron.
Yeah, it's like a Jersey town fair.
Well, we do know, like, being one of the very first, like, lore-heavy events that we get to play in the game was with Scaramouche, aka Wanderer, and there is that moment where he's like, so this is why you sent me this way. It's all a lie. The sky is fake. So I feel like there's a lot of concrete evidence for this. However, I don't know if they have the true sky, being that they're underground.
Well, are they underground or are we underground?
Well, I like to think that Teyvat as we know it was sort of placed upside down on top of the version of the world before, and that there's like weird pockets happening of like where they intersect. But that's my theory.
Like the little portal thing in Pariland that's like leaking the abyss juices in.
Yeah, and it's like a weird reflection thing happening where it's like going down, but then it's coming out of the sky too.
It makes me very curious to go to Conria. And honestly, it would make more sense of Conria being like a godless land if they could see the real sky. Like they actually knew what was up there type of thing. And it makes you question whether or not we actually landed in Conria as a traveler when we first got here, and why our sibling is so gung-ho about fighting for them.
Well, we know that our sibling was in Conria while we were still in the cocoon, the asteroid.
I'm curious if maybe that's where we started, because if they actually have like the entrance to real space as opposed to the fake sky in Teyvat, like we may have found ourselves in Conria right from the get-go.
Meaning the Heavenly Principles would be in Conria too, right?
But the door to Conria is upright in Sumeru, so I don't know.
It's one of those things where you jump through and all of a sudden the world flips and you're like, whoa.
Well, that's why I think there's like weird pockets of stuff being like remixed.
I think it's just really interesting. I think it's very cool to the story, and I think there's a lot of signs, especially like the statue and the upside down stuff that you've all kind of already mentioned and stuff. I don't usually think too much into it just because I think it hurts my brain, and then I just go into a whole thing about like, you know, Stranger Things and it being the upside down. So I like stay away from it, but I actually really enjoyed reading Kirk's message too, just because it was so like in depth, like with all the this is why this, and I was like, oh yeah, oh shit. Look at that.
But yeah, it's very thoughtful. So thank you, Kirk.
Yes, thank you, Kirk, for your message.
The sing-songy reply.
I love it. So our next message comes from Elliot, and they wrote, I love the lore drop they did at the end of Ito's music event. Plus, the event itself was a lot of fun. But I just gotta come back and love that lore drop of the inevitable coming war with the gods. What are your thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
Do we know it's the gods, though?
Not necessarily. They just say the big war.
The other war.
Which could also be a war against Shisnaya, for all we know.
Yeah, but I think like for the fact that it would like involve like she basically says like I'm not going to get involved in like other petty bullshit and stuff, but when it comes to that one, yeah, I'm going to have to fight again. And I feel like the only thing that would bring her back to that is the big, the big hoorah.
Yeah.
Which, can we just also, just to take a little pause on my 2 seconds of redemption that A got there when she said, like, well, one, she's like, I don't think they really want me to be bothering them and stuff. But she's just like, you know, I feel really bad about all my people that died and were doing all this stuff. It's so shitty.
Yeah. Quote unquote redemption.
Yeah, she's like, I feel bad for my people who were forced to go through this war while I was locked up in my consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was just like hanging out, vibing, meditating, and like people were killing each other.
I did not expect the two of them to show up at the end of that, though.
No, yeah.
I was like, oh, what?
I feel like they tried to hint at it when, like, they were like, Ito threw all these papers outside of the Raiden Shogun's place.
Yeah.
I mean, but he's done that shit in, like, even the line where Raiden's like, what is the name? Aritaka? Like, is it carne asada?
And it's so funny because she literally has the voice line where she's like, Arataki Ito, never heard of him.
Yeah.
So it was perfect. And she was like, I don't know who this guy is, but I'm here. And we love the return of Marco Meatball.
Yes.
Yeah, Dvorak.
He has such a calming voice.
Mhm.
Like, I was like,
I loved the fights between Ito and Paimon. Every single time they have to interact, and it gets more and more like ridiculous.
It's so good.
It's becoming my favorite thing. It really is. That and the ongoing joke that neither Goru or Ito are smart enough to figure out Miss Hina.
or
And their
Kokomi.
freaking like early 90s power ballad. I loved it.
It was much better than the rap.
No.
No,
Yes, it was.
no,
Maybe it wasn't meme worthy like the rap, but
I
it was
wanted them to
better.
rap though. I needed like some kind of, like, I needed a hard rock song. Like I needed
We
something
needed
more.
something.
Well, they said that they switched it up because light novels are so popular in Azuma that they thought they would tie in a light novel storyline, which then ended up making A go, is this about me?
Which I'm like, maybe.
Ain't it always about you?
And she's like, is this book about me? Yes, it is.
My other favorite item of a little throwaway type thing was, well, I guess I had two of them. The first was with Yaimiko when she was just like, wait, you didn't miss me? Like, she's like really devastated that we haven't been like really worried about what she's been doing during all of it. You fuck our brother or sister, whoever, our sibling. Fuck that. We should have been worried about Yaimiko. I loved it. And I just loved that when you go and talk to all your friends at all the setup, and there's a little Daruma. And it says, don't touch it. Don't touch the strange Daruma. And I'm like, oh, I
my
fucking touched the strange.
Did you poke the face or did you pat her head?
I did both.
I
Both.
patted her head and she's like, grow.
Yeah.
Gotta grow.
I stood there for a while and I was just like, poke, poke.
Don't touch my daughter.
I was like, come on, wake up. You're in there. Jump up.
It was a lot though, and I have a lot of questions from that, and I hope that some of our other friends maybe give us some inklings to that. Although I will say we do know Shiznai is working something up, so we'll see. But thank you, Elliot, for your question.
Thank you, Elliot.
Our last message comes from our Spotify Q&A. So if you guys didn't know, you can ask us a question on Spotify in every episode. We do get those, and we check them all out. And we were asked, why do you always use a guitar riff after we say Skynail?
Because it's fucking important.
We don't anymore.
Because it's fun.
Honestly, the real answer is because the first time it was said on the podcast, Feeny went, Skynail! It just sounded like heavy metal.
I am Metallica.
I had to add it, so sorry.
Skynail! I do try to say it sometimes still. I'm going to be completely honest. We haven't talked as much about the Skynails this season as we have in prior seasons.
Didn't we talk about like everybody being Skynailed like 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, in the Dada Upa.
Yeah. Well, that was one
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah, it used to be like every episode.
Yeah. Instead, we're talking about
We stopped
dead
talking about
kids.
Venti and the Skynail.
And now we're talking about dead kids and a giant snake
We
god.
talked a lot about dead kids.
Yeah, well, that's just Genshin.
Dead orphaned children.
That's just Genshin.
Yeah, I mean, Genshin is all about the orphans, so not helping the orphans, but orphans.
We just know that they're out there.
The only people I have ever seen in all of Teyvat really stand up for the right of orphans is Kaya and Diluc in the manga. When they're like, yeah, Dottore, you're not taking our orphans. And I'm like, yes, thank you. But I don't know what Mondstadt is doing with the orphans instead.
They make them protect the bridges.
No experiments. Well, Timmy doesn't know that he's an orphan.
And then an orphan comes into Mondstadt and like murders people. Thanks, Kale.
Kale. Oh, but she's not an orphan. Her parents are alive as far as we know, aren't they?
Yeah, but she's, separated from them since she was a baby.
Metaphorically orphaned.
They could have just same thing with Dehya. We don't know that parents were dead, but we know she was orphaned. She was just left behind.
Those are more assumed orphan alerts.
Yeah. Your parents leave you, you're an orphan.
Yeah. You're just an abandoned orphan rather than a, widowed orphan.
I thought your parents had to be dead for you to be an orphan.
No.
I thought you were just abandoned.
No, that's my little orphan Annie.
Yeah.
She's got real parents.
Yeah.
I've never seen
like
Annie.
an orphanage, like when kids are in an orphanage, their parents aren't necessarily dead.
What?
Wait, is this blowing your mind?
I felt like in an orphanage it was like your parents were either dead or in jail.
The definition of an orphan is a child whose parents have died, are unknown, or have permanently abandoned them.
Yeah, but a lot of people orphan their kids and then come back for them.
But so then they aren't
and then
orphan.
You become not an orphan. I feel like an orphan,
That's
like
just
that
being
title's
abandoned.
permanent.
Yes.
Well,
so like you go around calling yourself an orphan because your like parents abandoned you and you live with your aunt now, and then your mom comes back and they're like, yeah, I want custody, and you're like, okay, I'm not an orphan anymore.
I guess it depends on how temporary of an orphan you were.
it could happen. I mean, like, what if you thought your parents were dead and you're an orphan, and then you find out they're alive and they were separated from you for some reason and they take you back? Now you're
like
not an
Tarzan,
orphan anymore.
but without the parents dying in Tarzan.
Can you imagine being in middle school, right? And like it's June. Yeah, like, yeah, I'm
It's
an
getting very
orphan.
specific.
And then over the summer, your parents come back and yada, yada, yada. And you go back to school in September and people are like, oh, hey, little orphan, how you doing? And you're like, I'm not an orphan anymore. Like,
They would have just assumed you got adopted.
I'd assume you lied your ass off this whole time.
Wow.
Question is, if you are an orphan and you get adopted, are you still an orphan?
I
The
that
answer
is
is
a
no.
great question.
I don't think so.
But could it be? Because like also an orphan could, like, an adult who's lost both of their parents is considered an orphan.
I think you would be orphaned in the past,
Oh,
but
yeah.
you're not an orphan anymore.
We've become a verb.
The idea of being an orphan not being a permanent thing attached to you is what's shaking me to my core. Everyone in Teyvat is an orphan. Thank you for asking about the sky nails. I'm sorry, we talked about orphans instead.
We just blow past them.
We're like,
Orphans.
yes, I know, but orphans. And thank you for your message. And thank you everyone for listening into this episode. If you like this episode and you want to let us know what you think, or you want to message us and ask us questions about orphans or tell us your thoughts on orphans, you can follow us on Instagram, Tales of Teyvat Pod, or Twitter, Tales of Teyvat, or you can always email us at talesofteyvatpod@gmail.com. Additionally, you can feel free to find us on YouTube, where we do post video versions of all of our episodes. They have these very cute, adorable, like live backgrounds that Al's been putting together. So definitely check them out as well and subscribe. Otherwise, next week we are going to be talking about Duke Risley of Meropede. Until then, safe journeys, travelers. We'll see you next time.
Bye, Whitney Houston nerds. Speaking of queer ladies,
Somebody who's not an orphan in Teyvat.
how will I know if he's gonna abandon me in the sand?